guiding for me, fishing for me really took on something different. I could see it becoming a part of my life. Everything I own is because of fishing. Every damn thing I own is because of what fishing has provided for me. All the places I've guided, all the places I've fished around the world, that backdrop, the Teton Range, there's just nothing that comes close to that. You're out there and you're just getting into cutthroat. It's really something special and incredible. It's probably the most special fish in my mind, simply because you just cannot get those fish in other places. You know, these fish, the Snake River fine spotted cutthroat, are under a hell of a lot of pressure. You could damn near say it's had its teeth kicked in. My name's Boots Allen. I am a senior guide at Snake River Angler. I've had a chance to fish down in Argentina. I guided in Argentina. I fished in Mongolia. I fished in Russia. I fished in some beautiful, beautiful place for cold water fish, and nothing beats this. It's the most beautiful place I've ever fished in my life. I grew up here, and my family has been in Jackson since the 20s. So in 1932, my grandfather guided his first trip on the Snake River. In 1945, he opened his fly shop, which would eventually become Fort Jackson. Between 1945 and 1955, while he was guiding, he was dealing blackjack at the Wirt Hotel. He would be running that shop and running, the fly tying part of the business there, the guided trips, until right around 1973 when he turned it over to my uncle and my father. And they would run it until the late 1990s when they eventually sold it to the gentleman who I guide for now, Will Dornan. The Snake River watershed is a native cutthroat fishery, and they still have a fighting chance, and this is one of the few river systems where they are still relatively abundant and outcompeting non-native fish.
Oh, I got it.
Snake River fine spotted cutthroat. It's truly different from other cutthroats, and because of that, it's different from other fish. Typically, anglers think of cutthroats as pretty easy to catch and not very aggressive in the amount of fight they put up. And that's true for a hell of a lot of cutthroats until you get to the Snake River fine-spotted cutthroat. It's a completely different breed.
Oh, there he is.
Their ability to put up with that river that's averaging 18 feet per mile. So how many guests have I had that hooked into a cutthroat for the first time? And they're like, this isn't what I was told. I thought these things don't fight.
It's a good fish, dude.
Yeah, man. Because they're a product of their environment, they're tough. There's a tenacity to these fish that I really respect and appreciate. They have a broad tail. If they're in good condition, these fish will get in the current. They'll give you all you can handle.
Woo! They're strong in that cold water. It's a nice fish. His mouth's in good condition.
People come up here to fish dry flies, and people live here to fish dry flies.
Think they're gonna move for it? Don't know how that worked out, but it did.
Undeniably, the cutthroat looks up more on average than any other trout. It's incredible. The fly will drift down the seam. The fish will turn and eat it downstream with his mouth gaping open. You don't really see that often.
Man, that one's, I just blown away.
The pressure The demand is very high, which I'm grateful for. It's a tough situation. I'm grateful for phones ringing, people wanting us to take them fishing. That's what we do. But are we loving our fishery to death? That's a concern.
Great example of that change in usage is probably Wilson to South Park. That's the first and only stretch I was able to guide on my first year guiding. Back then, if you had 6 fishing boats on that stretch, that was considered kind of a busy day. We have a shuttle driver 10 years ago that did 68 fishing boats on that stretch. So in a 20-year time span, you had an increase of basically 10 times.
Snake River cutthroat trout are a subspecies of Yellowstone cutthroat trout. Here in Wyoming, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, they manage them as their own unique subspecies. They face threats from a number of different sources, and they're pretty common to the threats that cutthroat trout face all across the West. Habitat degradation and fragmentation, threats from increasing drought, changes in flow regime, climate change, warming temperatures, and invasive species and non-native species.
We're seeing our water temperatures on the Snake for the first time go over 70 degrees. Those dams, they do nothing for water temperature. Just the way they are, they're not deep reservoirs, and you can get water flowing into the Snake from Jackson Lake, and it'll be coming in at 62. The only hope then is that the tributaries right downstream are coming in cooler. That was always a saving grace, but it's not now because we're seeing water temperatures on those during the midsummer go into the high 60s and sometimes 70 for days on end. So that's, to me, is the primary threat is climate change for these fish. One of the other main issues threatening this fishery comes down to water storage. And Jackson Lake Dam was built primarily for irrigation purposes in central Idaho along the Snake River Plain. The state of Wyoming only gets about 4% of the water coming out of Jackson Lake. So when those farmers, when those irrigators need that water, they call for it. They're the ones that own it. So Bureau of Reclamation is basically storing water behind Jackson Lake. And 2 autumns ago, they had a drop that was just ridiculously short. I remember taking a photo of a side channel and then going out 3 days later, and that side channel had shrunk to 1/4 or 1/3 of its size. And that's the impact that irrigation is having on these rivers up here.
One of our missions is to protect resources for current and future generations. And my role within the Science and Resource Management Division is to understand those water resources. And one of those big players is the Bureau of Reclamation, who across the West are water managers, and they often operate dams, and Jackson Lake is one of those dams. And they dictate the outflow that goes down the Snake River from Jackson Lake. And we coordinate with them to try to express conditions needed for natural resources, specifically riparian areas like cottonwood galleries, fisheries, even down to the macroinvertebrates.
To have a healthy fishery, Game and Fish says minimum flows coming out of Jackson Lake have to be at least 280 CFS. The spooky issue is when Bureau of Reclamation wants to reduce it, and they have that right to do it. And in 2023, they released a plan that would dramatically reduce flows down to 50 CFS. You go down to 50 CFS, you're going to have a real issue with habitat, the impact it's going to have on aquatic invertebrates, your forage fish, not just trout.
One of the things that we are trying to grapple with is how is this changing with climate change, and we're seeing shifting baselines where an optimum flow strategy 10, 50, 100 years ago might look different from what we're going to see in 10 and 50 years from now. And so One of the opportunities that we have is to look at those projections and understand how might we prioritize and manage that landscape. And even though we have a dam in this system, there might actually be some ways to use that to our advantage to potentially buffer those impacts. It's critical to identify what those key flow components are to be able to actually advocate for a realistic flow strategy that still meets the needs of downstream users. And so we would be kidding ourselves if we thought we could have a completely natural flow regime in this particular case. And so understanding where all the parties are coming from to have a stake in the flow management of this is, I think, where a good middle ground is for where we can actually make progress.
See where that yellow leaf is? He was right there. So put a little bit above him.
You know, the Bureau of Rec kept telling us, if you want us to manage things differently, then we need more information, we need more data. And so Idaho State University has come on board, and they're doing a 2-year study. They're looking at the physical way, like the water drains and moves throughout the system through all the braids, as well as the ecological impacts. They're also asking, guides everyone to rally and looking for these isolated pools and drying up side channels and documenting any stranding they see. And so it's a little bit different because it's more of, hey, let's fill in some of these data gaps and let's help the study. And the goal is to get better management, and it's less of a reactive thing, more of a proactive thing.
The great thing now is that we're watching this and getting that research down. And I think the other great thing that's happening is that we have the numbers. You have those numbers of people that love that river. There you have a coalition. You have that group of people that are willing to fight. And alongside that, you do have a presence of Trout Unlimited. You have the Snake River Fund, Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. You have these groups that care. And nationally, you have it. You have American Rivers. American Rivers have been a major voice for the Snake River in Wyoming. So you have these organizations that come together in a unified way. And that's why those flows didn't go to 50 CFS.
So we started the Snake River Headwaters Initiative in 2016. We've completed 15 projects that have reconnected almost 40 miles of native cutthroat trout stream, restored 15 miles of stream, and done that together with over 65 conservation partners. And that represents over $9 million invested in these on-the-ground projects.
Low-impact fishing is it's almost a lifestyle. It's a mentality that you really just have to embrace and kind of wrap your head around.
It's cold. That's trout water. They're happy.
That's happy trout.
I know.
It could be the most subtle thing that you don't even think about, but if you do that act in the moment, it makes a difference.
There's all these little things that we as the public can do just to take personal responsibility and to recreate responsibly. We can avoid harming fish when those water temperatures get hot and avoid spreading aquatic invasives knowingly or unknowingly.
It's upon us now. We have that guest in our boat to instill the foundations of not only fly fishing, but giving them that connection to the resource and creating some type of stewardship. Teaching them that at the end of the day, your success is not measured fully on how many fish we caught. Your success is measured on, did you make a connection to this place?
I really think that the Snake River Headwaters watershed might be one of the last best places for cutthroat trout into the future. As we face a warming climate and different pressures and issues, this native cutthroat trout stronghold is going to be so important. And it might be one of the last places where your children or grandchildren can catch a native cutthroat trout in its native range.
Well, the town of Jackson is developing, and these nodes out on the West Bank are getting more developed. But you still have these places in Bridger Teton National Forest and up in Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone National Park that really look darn close to the same way they did when my grandfather was guiding in the 1930s. They're very, very close to looking like that. That's something that when I pass, and if my kids are living here, they're still going to see that because that is not going to be developed.
Okay, let's put them in.
Bye-bye. Wet high five. Fishy five.
And hopefully, cutthroat trout will still be there for them to enjoy.